This guy, he's stable, he's just too stable. Xu Jin sighed. If it weren't for Zhang Yi's constant reluctance to join Blizzard City, he would have wanted to recruit Zhang Yi under his command and cultivate him. He would definitely have become a capable general under his command. After Bian Zhen's death, his army's combat effectiveness had suffered a major blow. Without balance, his position could even become unstable. Zhang Yi, Zhang Yi. He muttered Zhang Yi's name, pondering what means he would use to win Zhang Yi over if the latter successfully completed his mission this time. Not long after Zhang Yi left the combat center, Bai Li Changqing arrived at his door. Upon meeting, Bai Li Changqing gave Zhang Yi a meaningful smile. Congratulations, you have finally become the captain of the investigation team. His eyes contained a lot of emotion. Thinking about it now, it is quite legendary that Zhang Yi was able to be promoted to captain of the investigation team as a foreigner from the outer city. Zhang Yi sensed his unusualness and guessed something in his heart. He asked, so what about you? Have you lost your position as captain? Bai Li Changqing shrugged helplessly. I was only temporarily in charge of the captain's position in the first place. Now I have figured it out, don't take on a job you can't handle. For some time in the past, although I was the captain of the investigation squad, no one really treated me as the captain. It's still easier this way. Zhang Yi touched his nose. It's not my fault. Bai Li Changqing nodded. I understand. Fortunately, the living conditions of my family have not changed. Zhang Yi said, I'm only the temporary captain. Once the Eclipse Moon mission is over, the Tengu squad may be disbanded. I will also step down, and I will recommend you to continue as captain. He smiled and put his arm around Bai Li Changqing's shoulders. After all, we are familiar with each other. If I don't help you, who will? It is always easier to get things done if you have connections. Of course, he had to take care of Bai Li Changqing. Bai Li Changqing didn't say anything, as he had experienced this kind of thing once before and had many feelings in his heart. Only by having one's own strength is one able to gain the recognition of others. Take Zhang Yi, for example. As long as he is strong enough, even without connections or background, he will still be able to get the job done. This is the advantage of the end of the world. It has shattered the original social rules, and allows those from ordinary backgrounds but with abilities to get their chance to shine. Bai Li Changqing said to Zhang Yi, you have just become the captain of the investigation squad, and there are some things you don't understand yet. I have been asked by the headquarters to give you an introduction to the duties and powers of the captain of the investigation squad. By the way, there are also two very important pieces of intelligence for you to deliver. Zhang Yi's face became serious when he heard the word intelligence. What intelligence? One is the personal information of the members of the Tengu squad. As the captain, you need to understand their abilities in order to command them reasonably. As for the Black Robe squad, I'm here, and everyone knows your strength, so basically no one will have any objections to you being captain. But as for the Heavenly God squad, since Deng Shentong's prestige is particularly high, the team members are also used to being arrogant. They may not be convinced that you, a foreigner from the outer city, can manage them. Bai Li Changqing gave him a wink. If necessary, you can show them who's boss and give them a scare. Zhang Yi stared at Bai Li Changqing with a strange look in his eyes. My, you're really taking advantage of the situation. But if the Heavenly God squad really doesn't respect his management, Zhang Yi will have to give them a good education. So, what about the other piece of information? Bai Li Changqing slowly put away the smile on his face. Second, it's the message Deng Shentong sent to headquarters before he died. This is a source secret about Eclipse Moon. In other words, Deng Shentong risked his life to obtain this information. Zhang Yi's face grew grave. He really knew nothing about the leader of Eclipse Moon, Phoenix Ren. His abilities, his strength, were all a mystery to him. Although Deng Shentong had lost to him, with his strength, Deng Shentong would definitely be able to force Phoenix Ren to reveal enough of his cards. This piece of information is extremely crucial. Xinxin, come over here and take a look. Zhang Yi asked Yang Xinxin, who was hugging Flower, to come into the living room to help analyze the information. Bai Li Changqing found a suitable position and began to play the image data on the laptop. Let's watch the data sent back by Deng Shentong first, Zhang Yi said. Bai Li Changqing nodded, and then found the data. Zhang Yi sat on the sofa and pushed the glass of water from the table to Bai Li Changqing's side. Then the three of them intently watched the screen. This was the last piece of footage left behind by Deng Shentong. Most of the front part of it was blank. This was because Deng Shentong had used his ability to distort light, so that no recording device could capture an accurate image. All that could be heard was the sound. However, based on a few conversations between the two of them, some information could still be obtained. This part is the ability of Phoenix Ren to be reborn after death. Immortal? Indeed, it is a very troublesome ability. Zhang Yi frowned slightly. How exactly do you deal with someone who cannot be killed? Although he does not believe that anyone can truly be immortal. Every time Phoenix Ren regenerates, he must consume supernatural energy or something else. But who knows where his limits lie? Moreover, from the sounds of the battle, it could be deduced that he was on par with Deng Shentong in close combat. After a long time, the white light that enveloped everything slowly faded away. In its place was an endless red inferno. Zhang Yi saw Deng Shentong, who was wrapped in flames and in extreme pain. He also saw the terrifying figure of a body, wrapped in flames. Phoenix Ren sneered and charged over again and again. Even so, Deng Shintong still had not lost the ability to resist. The white light of the holy body blessing fought against the flames of the phoenix, and he was also fighting fiercely against Phoenix Ren. Deng Shintong killed Phoenix Ren again and again. However, Phoenix Ren got up again and again. Deng Shintong's voice came through the image and reached the ears of the three people. This guy, where's his weak point? Is it true that he cannot die? No. This is absolutely impossible. There's no such thing as an immortal carbon-based life form in this world. There must be something that I haven't discovered yet. But, am I really going to lose? No, there's something wrong. I shouldn't have lost. How could I have lost? Although his abilities are abnormal, I'm stronger than him. But I really did lose. There must be something wrong. Ah. So that's it. I understand everything. There's a traitor in Blizzard City. Someone leaked my abilities. When he heard Deng Shintong say this sentence with his own mouth, Zhang Yi's hand holding the cup involuntarily tightened. His sword eyebrows stood upright, and the suspicion in his heart was infinitely magnified. There was really a mole inside Blizzard City? Yang Xinxin's gaze was fixed on the screen, but her expression was unusually calm. But Zhang Yi knew that she was also thinking frantically inside. Bai Li Changqing's expression was as usual, and it was obvious that this was not the first time he had watched the video. Zhang Yi muttered to himself, so, the Blizzard City executives must have seen it too. Zhu Jing has seen it, and so has Dang Yuanbo. They all suspect that Blizzard City has a traitor. Is that why they are so eager to nominate me as the captain of the Tengu? Or are they setting me up to lure out the traitor? No, I can't trust anyone. Not even Zhu Jing. Zhang Yi felt like a headless chicken. As an outsider, he didn't understand the ins and outs. He didn't even know anything about the power struggle between the major factions in Blizzard City. Therefore, he couldn't make any rash comments. However, he had to do his best to avoid getting involved. Zhang Yi quickly gathered his thoughts and continued watching the video. In the video, it was clear that Deng Shintong was already tottering and could no longer hold on. Facing Phoenix Ren, who could come back from the dead, Deng Shintong had no way to counteract him at the moment. However, Phoenix Ren seemed to know everything about his abilities and even the way he attacked. In the end, as his strength failed him, he collapsed among the ruins. His weak voice came through. Listen. I, cough cough. Know his abilities. He can see the future and see the way I attack. Remember, be careful of this. You have to use the law of cause and effect against him. In the image, a huge flaming fist smashed towards his face. Let Zhang Yi. Deng Shintong left those last three words, and then the image was completely engulfed in white light. Everyone knows that that was the bomb used by a captain-level figure when they choose to blow themselves up. The video footage of Deng Shintong ended here. Zhang Yi crossed his arms in front of him and hung his head in deep thought. The last image left by Deng Shintong revealed too much information. Can Phoenix Ren see through Deng Shintong's future? This ability, combined with the attribute of immortality, is simply despairing. In his last sentence, let Zhang Yi. An incomplete sentence with only 3 words, but it pushed Zhang Yi to the front of the Blizzard City hierarchy. The law of cause and effect. Zhang Yi understood the meaning of these words in his heart. If he had guessed correctly, there was a very powerful law of cause and effect present in Zhang Yi's body. It could even reverse the cycle of life and death. At one point, he had thought that the reason he was able to come back from the dead was because he had awakened a special supernatural ability. It was just that he had not yet discovered it. Zhang Yi had a sudden urge. Should I go to the Deng family and ask for their help in the future? Help in the future? At this time, Bai Li Changqing's voice echoed in his ears. After watching it, what did you gain? Zhang Yi turned his head and looked at him, smiling faintly. The gains are too great. I didn't expect the opponent to be such a nuisance. Bai Li Changqing said, however, Deng Shintong mentioned at the end that you could deal with him. He didn't finish talking, so don't speculate. Bai Li Changqing laughed, however, and said, 4 of the 5 people who died in the Eclipse Moon formation were killed by you. It is now basically certain that the opponent has a mutant who can predict the future. But you have influenced the cause and effect, which proves that you are their nemesis. Zhang Yi said, but that alone is not enough. How can you win if you can't kill them? Bai Li Changqing asked, can you not seal him in your dimensional space? Zhang Yi said, dimensional space does not have the ability to actively collect living things. It is driven by thoughts. My thoughts are only effective on inanimate objects. As for living people, unless they are willing to enter dimensional space on their own, they cannot be collected forcibly. Bai Li Changqing slapped his thigh. That's easy. Just smash him up and throw him into dimensional space, and you're done. Zhang Yi gave Bai Li Changqing a deep look. Are you even speaking in complete sentences? Do you think I'm Deng Shintong? Deng Shintong could kill Phoenix Ren dozens of times because he had an incredibly powerful attack. But Zhang Yi was good at defense. It would be difficult for him to kill Phoenix Ren even once. Not to mention Phoenix Ren's ability to predict the opponent's actions, it was hard to say if it would work on Zhang Yi. Just as the two were discussing, Yang Xinxin suddenly spoke up, offering a thought-provoking idea. I remember that when Deng Shintong fought Phoenix Ren, the shrine maiden Mayumi Takeuchi was also there. Zhang Yi and Bai Li Changqing looked at her. So what? Are you saying that she had an impact on the battle? Yang Xinxin bit her pink fingernail. Phoenix Ren's abilities are from the trait system, immortality, regeneration, fire, and superb physical strength. According to our understanding of supernatural abilities, it is impossible for him to have the ability of the time system at the same time. So I guess Mayumi Takeuchi gave him this ability. In other words, if we can get rid of her first, then we can at least reduce Phoenix Ren's combat effectiveness by 30%. This suggestion instantly opened up a new line of thought for Zhang Yi. Indeed, it is a highly probable possibility. After some discussion, the group gained a lot of information from the footage left behind by Deng Shintong. Bai Li Changqing smiled and said, "Actually, you don't need to put too much pressure on yourself. The source of this operation is to block the prediction ability of the Shrine Maiden from Eclipse Moon. As for dealing with Phoenix Ren, there is someone more suitable than you." Zhang Yi's eyes narrowed. "You mean Gao Changkong?" Bai Li Changqing nodded without hesitation. Gao Changkong's abilities are actually very suitable for dealing with Phoenix Ren. Of course, I can't tell you what his abilities are right now. But if I'm right, he will be the leader of this operation. And you, as before, will be more of a support to him. Bai Li Changqing was a good friend of Gao Changkong's and a fan of his. Combined with his knowledge of Gao Changkong's abilities and his partial knowledge of Zhang Yi's abilities, he was convinced that headquarters would let Gao Changkong lead the next mission to eradicate the Eclipse Moon. Zhang Yi gazed off into the distance without refuting Bai Li Changqing's words. Theoretically, there was nothing wrong with what Bai Li Changqing said. But Bai Li Changqing was, after all, just a soldier, and he didn't understand anything about power struggles. Gao Changkong did have better combat training and command capabilities than Zhang Yi. However, his status meant that he could not be the leader of this operation. To achieve great success and thereby threaten the leadership is the greatest taboo for subordinates throughout the ages. To put it bluntly, even if Gao Changkong does the most, Blizzard City will focus on praising Zhang Yi's achievements, not his. We'll see. Zhang Yi slapped his thigh. By the way, I'm now the captain of the Tengu squad, so can I get captain-level weapons and equipment? He pointed his finger at Yang Xinxin. I also have 3 helpers by my side. They will also be temporarily incorporated into the Tengu squad, and I have already spoken to Commander Zhu about this. So they also need to receive equipment. Bai Li Changqing nodded. No problem. Just let me know what equipment you need, and I will have someone deliver it. Zhang Yi's smile grew wider and wider at the corner of his mouth. He shook his head. No, we'd better go there ourselves. After all, I need more weapons. Bai Li Changqing's eyes slowly widened as he looked at Zhang Yi, who was smiling strangely, as if he had guessed what the guy was going to do. Not long after, Zhu Zheng, who was still working in the office, received a report from the quartermaster. What? Zhang Yi collected a large quantity of weapons? An extremely large quantity? Commander Zhu, he used his supernatural powers of space to collect a large quantity of weapons. The quantity is a bit ridiculous. The quartermaster whispered in the corner, unable to help but turn his head to look inside the warehouse at Zhang Yi, who was doing some serious shopping. This is an emergency, Commander Zhu. He said in tears. After so many years as a quartermaster, this was the first time he had encountered such a way of collecting supplies. It was as if he were a woman shopping at a discount supermarket. Zhu Xing thought about it and shook his head with a smile. This kid really lives by the spirit of anyone who doesn't take advantage of a bargain is a bastard. Never mind, just give him as much as he needs. After all, they were just ordinary hot weapons, and in the end times, the power of these weapons had been greatly weakened. Moreover, they weren't difficult to make, all you needed was iron and gunpowder, and you could even say that there was an endless supply of them. The quartermaster said to Zhang Yi. There are also heavy machine guns over here. Take a look. Zhang Yi waved his hand, and told them with a smile. Great. I'll take all of it. Zhang Yi finished collecting a large amount of equipment and returned to the villa in Area A. Later, Zhu Xing will officially announce the formation of the Tengu squad and appoint Zhang Yi as its captain. These things did not concern Zhang Yi. The reputation of Blizzard City was not something he valued. However, he was still quite worried about Liang Yu's situation. Although rationally, he understood that the Deng family could not do anything to Liang Yu at this time. But the long-standing habit of caution has never made him give up his sense of worry. It was a little after 9 o'clock in the evening when Liang Yu called Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi answered the phone immediately. Liang Yu, how are you doing? Do you feel anything unusual? On the other end of the line, Liang Yu was surrounded by a dozen staff members in white protective clothing, and behind her was a huge blue experimental chamber. The staff were still preparing for the final work. Liang Yu felt Zhang Yi's concern in his tone, and her heart warmed. She said, the preliminary preparations are complete, and next I will enter the experimental capsule they have prepared for me. The experiment will last 3 days, and I won't be able to get out until then. I won't be able to contact you during that time. Zhang Yi was silent for a moment, wanting to say something like take care but not sure if it was appropriate. After a long pause, he said, I'll wait for you to come back. Liang Yu's smile deepened. Yeah. After the brief conversation between the two was over, Liang Yu handed her phone to the staff member, who took it and sealed it away in a safe. Then a female staff member came over and asked Liang Yu to lie down in the experimental capsule. Liang Yu nodded and did as she was told. Outside the laboratory, on the second floor, Deng Yuanbo, Lianqing, and the head of the laboratory were watching the scene. The person in charge asked Deng Yuanbo, "Chairman, do we really have to use up the level A source supply? Experiments of this level are also extremely costly for us. It is even second only to the cultivation of the young master in the beginning." Deng Yuanbo narrowed his eyes and said indifferently, "Just do as I say. In business, the large initial investment is for the continuous and abundant returns later. We cannot lose this operation against Eclipse Moon again. Moreover, I will also take this opportunity to root out the mole in Blizzard City." A fierce look flashed in the eyes of Deng Yuanbo. Although Zhang Yi knew that this method of rapidly enhancing the strength of mutants would consume a lot of energy, he had no idea just how terrifying that consumption would be. The higher the talent of a mutant, the greater the consumption in enhancing their strength, including the consumption of energy in the middle. It is no exaggeration to say that the resources consumed in upgrading the abilities of a mutant of Liang Yu's level could even create 10 mutants of the investigation squad level. This is the price of forcing growth. If they are not true geniuses, being forced to upgrade their abilities in this way will only exhaust their potential. However, Deng Yuanbo was not worried at all about Liang Yu. Her body and her will have both been tempered through countless trials. After collecting his weapons, Zhang Yi returned to the villa in Area A and began to study and analyze ways to deal with Eclipse Moon with Yang Xinxin while eating dinner. He didn't know anything about fighting, but he had a lot of experience fighting mutants. The information Deng Shintong had risked his life to retrieve was very crucial. It was clear that Phoenixren was a very difficult opponent to deal with. He had the ability to never die, superb melee combat capabilities, and the blessing of a shamaness who could see the future. When these conditions are combined, the result is overwhelming. However, as long as the ability exists, the method to deal with him must also exist. Zhang Yi must find a way to restrain Phoenixren and the other powerful mutants under his command before considering action. Fortunately, these days, Eclipse Moon is also in a state of recuperation, and they still have some time to prepare. "Xinxin, can you guess what the people from Eclipse Moon are doing right now?" Zhang Yi asked. Eclipse Moon had been missing for almost a week since the battle in Jiangning City. The use of the Reaper of Love had caused the electromagnetic systems in most of the Jiangnan region to lose their effectiveness. And there was no way of knowing where Eclipse Moon was. But everyone understood that Eclipse Moon would definitely make a comeback. Otherwise, they would not have risked crossing the sea. Zhang Yi believes that we must understand their logic in order to prepare in advance. Yang Xinxin said leisurely, "In the last battle, they lost 5 people. Although in the end, they won a Pyrrhic victory and the siege of the Jiangnan region failed, but in terms of the strength of the two sides, they did not necessarily win the duel. The Jiangnan region has a deep foundation, and after the Heavenly God Squad was defeated, they still have other forces they can mobilize. However, Eclipse Moon will have difficulty replacing their forces." Therefore, she looked at Zhang Yi, her eyes shining like dark stars. "I suspect that the next time they come, they will definitely bring reinforcements." Zhang Yi crossed his arms in front of him. "Reinforcements? Their comrades in Neon?" Although from an intelligence perspective, Eclipse Moon belonged to an elite squad structure and did not have any other comrades. But as a member of the landing faction, there must be rogues who share the same ideas as them. Seeing how Eclipse Moon has caused a huge stir in the Jiangnan region, maybe someone is tempted to follow in their footsteps and try to get a piece of the pie. Yang Xinxin, however, said, "In the future, the opponents we will face could come from any force. Since the day the Ice Age began, the world has been completely different. The Huashu Kingdom is lucky. We have the world's top power and can maintain our base. But most of the southeastern region is full of small countries that don't have the natural power to hold their territory together and have therefore collapsed. If I'm not wrong, the southeastern region, including the southern seas, is in a complete mess. There are even more private military organizations than there are cattle. Those vicious people are likely to harass the border. It is also possible to be influenced by those under the Eclipse Moon." Zhang Yi sighed, "That's why I hate those snakes and rats. Although they are not necessarily lethal, their sheer numbers can be annoying. The only good news is that those areas are relatively fragmented. For one thing, the population is not large, and the combined population of some of the smaller countries was not even as high as that of Tianhai City. Second, their technology is relatively outdated. Therefore, in such areas, the possibility of producing high-level mutants is relatively low." Just as Zhang Yi was pondering the next round of the plan to encircle and annihilate Eclipse Moon, there were surging undercurrents in Blizzard City, and no one was idle. Everyone had set their sights on Eclipse Moon. Perhaps to ordinary people, the existence of Eclipse Moon was a disgrace that they must wash away with their blood. But to the various factions in Blizzard City, this was a power struggle. Everyone knows that if they can defeat Eclipse Moon, they will gain enormous prestige in Blizzard City and increase the power of their faction. In response, Zhu Xing summoned the entire senior management of Blizzard City. The content of the meeting was the plan for the next siege of Eclipse Moon. The following day, the Combat Command Center was exceptionally lively. There were a very large number of participants, and all the important people in Blizzard City had come. Not only Zhu Zheng, Tu Yunlai, and others, but also some middle and senior management personnel were also present. The meeting room of the senior management of the Combat Command Center was very lively, with hundreds of people. This kind of gathering of this scale is extremely rare in the history of Blizzard City. Zhang Yi appeared on the scene with Yang Xinxin. His reputation was not prominent, and it was only after the last siege operation when he killed 4 eclipse moons that he caught the attention of certain people. However, when he appeared at the venue, not many people eagerly greeted him. At most, they exchanged polite greetings, nodding and smiling politely. After all, Zhang Yi's identity was that of an outsider from the outer city. This identity determined that he would have difficulty entering the true core of Blizzard City in the future. Zhang Yi didn't care about the attitude of these people either. He never liked dealing with these people, and it was better if they didn't bother him. However, Zhang Yi noticed that there were clearly 2 lively circles in the meeting place. One circle was centered around Tu Yunlai, the head of the operations department. He always dressed in military uniform, with half his face always covered by his collar, giving off an unfathomable sense of mystery. The other circle was the Reincarnation Squad circle led by Gao Changkong. Both circles have gathered quite a few people, and they are discussing how to get a share of Eclipse Moon's wealth, barely keeping their voices down. Minister 2, we will fully support you in this operation to surround and attack Eclipse Moon. Your abilities are obviously superior to those of the investigation team captains. If it weren't for that, how could you be given the most important task of defending Blizzard City? It's just that the investigation teams are more well-known. They don't really think that you are weaker than them, do they? This siege of Eclipse Moon is of great significance to the Jiangnan region. As a top combatant, you must step in to ensure the success of the operation. I will go speak to Commander Zhu. Tu Yunlai was surrounded by a few senior executives of Blizzard City. They included the heads of the administrative and financial departments, all of whom were dressed in suits. Tu Yunlai didn't say much, and his expression was as cold as usual, but he politely bowed his head to thank them. Gao Changkong, on the other hand, brought along his deputy captains, Jiu Shen and Gu Man. Compared to Tu Yunlai, he had a much larger circle of people. Gao Changkong was generally well-liked, being friendly and approachable. Moreover, among the lower and middle classes of Blizzard City, his voice carried the most weight. Except in the eyes of some women, he is slightly inferior to the super-rich second-generation Deng Shintong, and there are few people in the entire Blizzard City whose popularity can be compared to his. Captain Gao, you must bear the burden this time. I hope you can live up to your mission and successfully complete it. As long as you succeed this time, even if you come from a lowly background, you can rely on this achievement to rise up. With our support, you may even be able to enter the core of power in Blizzard City in the future. Gao Changkong looked embarrassed. You are joking, everyone. I, Gao Changkong, have no other thoughts. As a soldier, my duty is to protect the safety of the Jiangnan region and maintain the glory that belongs to the Jiangnan region. For this reason, I will mercilessly eliminate any enemy that comes to invade. His gaze was sharp as a sword when he mentioned Eclipse Moon. The representatives of the factions around him who supported him were very satisfied with his attitude and nodded with a smile. Zhang Yi and the others arrived early, so they found a place to wait. Gao Changkong suddenly noticed Zhang Yi was sitting behind him. Captain Zhang, long time no see. Zhang Yi stared at Gao and replied. Long time no see, Captain Gao. Zhang Yi and the others arrived relatively early, so they found a place to wait. Before long, Bai Li Changqing arrived at the venue. As soon as he saw Zhang Yi, he hurried over to say hello. Hey, there's my captain. Why are you sitting here? Bai Li Changqing came over with a smile, then affectionately put his arm around Zhang Yi's shoulders. Zhang Yi sat there looking a little lonely. At least compared to the popular Gao Changkong and Tu Yunlai, he didn't look impressive at all. Zhang Yi gave a faint smile. Everyone likes to burn hot stoves, no one likes to stir up cold rice. Even if I, a foreigner from the outer city, take on the position of captain of the Tengu team, it's unlikely that I'll be looked upon favorably by the bigwigs in Blizzard City. Bai Li Changqing rubbed his chin. There's nothing we can do about it. There will always be a strict chain of command and a deep-seated sense of hierarchy. As a mutant from the outer city, you are looked down upon by most people in Blizzard City. You are even looked down upon by Gao Changkong, who came from the bottom of Blizzard City. Let them think what they want. Zhang Yi shrugged nonchalantly. By the way, Bailey, who do you like better? Zhang Yi's mouth curled up into a meaningful smile as he looked at Bai Li Changqing with a smile. Bai Li Changqing's gaze wandered between the two circles, looking at Tu Yunlai and then at the popular Gao Changkong. He sat next to Zhang Yi and whispered, both of these people have submitted a request for battle to Commander Zhu, hoping to lead the operation to encircle and attack Eclipse Moon. But it seems that the Reincarnation Squad has a slightly better chance, because the Yan Yunwei needs to defend Blizzard City. Even though Tu Yunlai is very strong and has the ability to direct large-scale battles, he is still needed to protect the safety of the higher-ups. So if I have to choose between these two, I would vote for Gao Changkong. Yang Xinxin suddenly spoke coldly. Are these the only two people you've chosen? Bai Li Changqing froze for a moment. Then he saw Zhang Yi's meaningful smile and realized that he had overlooked Zhang Yi. But Could Zhang Yi be the leader of this operation? Bai Li Changqing laughed. Zhang Yi, come on, will you? You're not that kind of person. Bai Li Changqing knew Zhang Yi and knew that he was not the kind of person who liked to fight for fame and fortune. If he could, Zhang Yi would rather stay at home and do nothing than get involved in any task that did not concern him. After laughing, he said leisurely, what's more, you're from the outer city. I don't mean to look down on you, but in Blizzard City, people do have this kind of xenophobia. You can't tell in normal times, but it's especially obvious in critical times. He shrugged. Wasn't that the same in your Tianhai city in the beginning? Zhang Yi laughed and said, if you say so, then so be it. Soon after, Zhu Zheng arrived at the venue with Lan Xingqing and Sun Lushuan. Everyone immediately fell silent and greeted Zhu Zheng. Zhu Zheng waved to them in return and then told them to sit down. Everyone looked expectantly at Zhu Zheng, waiting for him to announce the person in charge of the third encirclement plan. And the power structure of Blizzard City would also change as a result. Both Tu Yunlai and Gao Changkong had an expectant look in their eyes. Zhu Zheng went to the front of the stage and began his speech. First, he summed up the reasons for the failure of the previous two encirclement and suppression plans and did some self-reflection. But soon, he mentioned the gains from the two encirclement and suppression missions. Here, I want to praise one person in particular. That is Zhang Yi from Tianhai City. During the second encirclement mission, he single-handedly killed 4 members of Eclipse Moon and saved the face of the Jiangnan region. Because of this outstanding achievement, as well as Zhang Yi's personal courage and loyalty to the Jiangnan region, I have decided to form a new temporary investigation team with the Black Robe Investigation Squad and the Heavenly Investigation Squad as the sources. It will be named Tengu, and Zhang Yi will be appointed as the captain of the investigation team. As soon as these words were spoken, there was a flurry of discussion. However, the expressions on everyone's faces did not show too much surprise. This news had long been rumored among the higher-ups. Everyone also understood that such a new force was indeed needed. And Zhang Yi had experience fighting against Eclipse Moon and had achieved excellent results, so it was reasonable for him to be the captain. However, what followed Zhu Zheng's words made many people feel that the tone had changed. Because Zhu Zheng did not mention Tu Yunlai or Gao Changkong at all, but kept praising the outstanding deeds of Zhang Yi, calling him a rare genius. From now on, for the sake of the confidentiality of senior combat personnel, we will no longer refer to Zhang Yi by his name. Instead, we will refer to him by the codename Chaos, or by his rank. Similarly, the elite members of other combat units will also be referred to by their corresponding code names. Those who have a code name are all elites, such as the members of the investigation squad and those in the Yan Yunwei who are above the level of captain. In the past, these code names were only used during missions. However, the Tengu squad was only a temporary formation. A special code name was applied for Zhang Yi. And the phrase from now on did not sound ordinary no matter how you heard it. Everyone listened to Zhu Zheng's tone and sensed that the situation was becoming a bit more complicated. Gao Changkong lowered his eyes and thought deeply. Tu Yunlai also frowned. What exactly did Commander Zhu mean? Bai Li Changqing, who was sitting near Zhang Yi, gradually became more and more irritated. He looked down at Zhang Yi and muttered to himself, no, it's impossible, right? Just as he had this thought, he heard Zhu Zheng's voice in his ear. After careful consideration, I have decided that in the upcoming operation to encircle and destroy Eclipse Moon, the Tengu squad will take the lead, and the Reincarnation squad will coordinate with the Tengu squad. Zhang Yi, on the other hand, will be the supreme commander on the battlefield, and the combat center will provide battlefield guidance. Once these words were spoken, the entire meeting hall exploded. Although they were all highly qualified individuals and would not normally lose their composure in the presence of someone as senior as Zhu Zheng, the current situation had everyone shocked beyond belief. What? You want to let a mutant from the outer city be the commander-in-chief of this operation? What qualifications does he have? In terms of popularity or tactical skills, he is no match for Gao Changkong or Tu Yunlai. This is a bit too much of a joke. But Commander Zhu must have given this decision careful consideration. It seems that this Zhang Yi does have exceptional abilities. Some people muse to themselves. He was able to kill 4 members of Eclipse Moon, so he is quite capable, but can he command people like Gao Changkong and Tu Yunlai? Others quickly figured out the reason behind this. Is Commander Zhu worried that his achievements will make him too powerful? So he chose a mutant from the outer city, who is easy to control, to take on an important role. But if he's not up to the task and the third siege fails, that would be a big problem. Everyone had their own thoughts. Tu Yunlai looked shocked for a moment, but quickly regained his composure. Gao Changkong, on the other hand, was fuming with anger. Qiyushin said angrily, who does he think he is, coming here to command us? Gao Changkong shook his head at him. Commander Zhu must have his reasons for making this decision. And I've heard that this Zhang Yi has his own unique way of doing things. Gao Changkong got along well with Bai Li Changqing, so he had heard some of Zhang Yi's exploits. Zhang Yi had a straight face. Both Zhu Zheng and Deng Yuanbo had already spoken to him about this matter, so he wasn't surprised. On the contrary, Bai Li Changqing was dumbfounded. He looked at Zhu Zheng on the stage and then at Zhang Yi, who had a calm face, before realizing that Zhang Yi had already known everything. He slapped his head. No wonder you agreed to accept the position of captain of Tengu squad. It turns out that Commander Zhu promised you such a great benefit. Once the mission to besiege Eclipse Moon was successful, the rewards Zhang Yi received would undoubtedly be huge, and he would also be able to become the hero of the entire Jiangnan region. Even in the entire Huashu kingdom, legends about him would circulate in the folklore. Asking himself if there was such an opportunity in front of him, Bai Li Changqing would rush to grasp it. Zhu Jing looked towards Zhang Yi on the stage. Captain Zhang Yi, come up and say a few words. Zhang Yi suddenly got up and walked onto the front stage under the gaze of everyone. His gaze swept over the crowd at the scene, and he said a bunch of platitudes in a very official manner, so I won't repeat them here. I will do my best to take down these evil Ronin and maintain the dignity of Jiangnan region as well as Huashu as a whole. It is my generation's duty to revive the nation's glory. Thank you. By the way, in the future, please address me by my official title at work, and don't use my real name. Changqing, who was sitting near Zhang Yi, gradually became more and more irritated. He looked down at Zhang Yi and muttered to himself, no, it's impossible, right? Just as he had this thought, he heard Zhu Zheng's voice in his ear. After careful consideration, I have decided that in the upcoming operation to encircle and destroy Eclipse Moon, the Tengu Squad will take the lead, and the Reincarnation Squad will coordinate with the Tengu Squad. Zhang Yi, on the other hand, will be the supreme commander on the battlefield, and the combat center will provide battlefield guidance. Once these words were spoken, the entire meeting hall exploded. Although they were all highly qualified individuals and would not normally lose their composure in the presence of someone as senior as Zhu Zheng, the current situation had everyone shocked beyond belief. What? You want to let a mutant from the outer city be the commander-in-chief of this operation? What qualifications does he have? In terms of popularity or tactical skills, he is no match for Gao Changkong or Tu Yunlai. This is a bit too much of a joke. But Commander Zhu must have given this decision careful consideration. It seems that this Zhang Yi does have exceptional abilities. Some people mused to themselves. He was able to kill 4 members of Eclipse Moon, so he is quite capable, but can he command people like Gao Changkong and Tu Yunlai? Others quickly figured out the reason behind this. Is Commander Zhu worried that his achievements will make him too powerful? So he chose a mutant from the outer city, who is easy to control, to take on an important role. But if he's not up to the task and the third siege fails, that would be a big problem. Everyone had their own thoughts. Tu Yunlai looked shocked for a moment, but quickly regained his composure. Gao Changkong, on the other hand, was fuming with anger. Qi Yushin said angrily, who does he think he is, coming here to command us? Gao Changkong shook his head at him. Commander Zhu must have his reasons for making this decision. And I've heard that this Zhang Yi has his own unique way of doing things. Gao Changkong got along well with Bai Li Changqing, so he had heard some of Zhang Yi's exploits. Zhang Yi had a straight face. Both Zhu Zheng and Deng Yuanbo had already spoken to him about this matter, so he wasn't surprised. On the contrary, Bai Li Changqing was dumbfounded. He looked at Zhu Zheng on the stage and then at Zhang Yi, who had a calm face, before realizing that Zhang Yi had already known everything. He slapped his head. No wonder you agreed to accept the position of captain of Tengu Squad. It turns out that Commander Zhu promised you such a great benefit. Once the mission to besiege Eclipse Moon was successful, the rewards Zhang Yi received would undoubtedly be huge, and he would also be able to become the hero of the entire Jiangnan region. Even in the entire Huashu kingdom, legends about him would circulate in the folklore. Asking himself if there was such an opportunity in front of him, Bai Li Changqing would rush to grasp it. Zhu Jing looked towards Zhang Yi on the stage. Captain Zhang Yi, come up and say a few words. Zhang Yi suddenly got up and walked onto the front stage under the gaze of everyone. His gaze swept over the crowd at the scene, and he said a bunch of platitudes in a very official manner, so I won't repeat them here. I will do my best to take down these evil Ronin and maintain the dignity of Jiangnan region as well as Huashu as a whole. It is my generation's duty to revive the nation's glory. Thank you. By the way, in the future, please address me by my official title at work, and don't use my real name. After the polite words were finished, Zhang Yi walked off the podium with a calm demeanor. At the special occasion, Zhu Zhen didn't waste time talking about too many things. The meeting ended quickly, and he left Gao Changkong, Tu Yunlai, and Zhang Yi behind to chat alone for a while. It was nothing more than asking Gao Changkong and Tu Yunlai to take a stand and support Zhang Yi's efforts. Tu Yunlai's attitude was very frank. As a professional soldier, it wasn't false that he had his own ambitions, and his doubts about Zhang Yi's ability also existed. But as long as the top brass decided on something, he would not go against it. And Gao Changkong also smiled and said that he would obey the decision of the region and fully support Zhang Yi's work. Zhu Jing looked at Zhang Yi. Next, the matter of you serving as captain will be communicated to the entire city to publicize you as chaos. This is something that will happen on our publicity outlets, and you need to reach out to the members of your squad and seize the time for training. Most importantly, familiarize yourself with your team members and make them trust you. Zhang Yi nodded. I certainly understand this matter. However, I would like to ask, is there any news about Eclipse Moon now? Zhu Jing shook his head. After they disappeared, there has been no movement. We even suspect that they left the continent from the harbor and went back to Neon to recruit. Zhang Yi frowned. Back to Neon? Zhu Jing said, that is their home base after all. He suddenly sneered, relying on the things they did here, I guess they must have a good reputation in Neon itself, so they can gather more Ronin to come. It just so happens that I also want to fight a beautiful battle to turn the tide. Everything was unknown. Zhu Jing said, take this time to familiarize yourself with your team. He reached out and placed his hand on Zhang Yi's shoulder, patting it twice with force, his gaze containing expectations. We will mold you into a hero, and your body also holds the hopes of the people of the entire Jiangnan region. So you must give it your all. Don't feel too much pressure, this time our preparations are solid. If necessary, 2 Yunlai and Yanyan army will also be deployed. Zhang Yi's pupil was a little dilated. You even have to send out Yan Yunwei? Yan Yunwei was the most important force in defending Blizzard City, and once they left Blizzard City, it would result in a huge reduction in Blizzard City's defense. It seemed that this time, Zhu Jing had really made up his mind. Zhu Jing nodded, there are no enemies within the region, the enemies are all outside. I have made comprehensive preparations, there is no need for you to worry about that. Zhang Yi naturally did not worry about Blizzard City in his heart. If the Yan Yunwei led by 2 Yunlai, the reincarnation squad, plus their Tengu squad were added, then it could be said that the armed forces deployed this time were at least 3 times stronger than the last time. According to Zhang Yi's analysis of Heavenly God Squad's combat power, unless they had found even more powerful helpers, there was almost no chance of defeat for the Jiangnan region in this battle. Zhang Yi nodded, his heart slightly at ease. I understand. After the meeting was over, Gao Changkong was drinking tea in the lounge on the first floor of the combat center, with his girlfriend Gu Man sitting in the seat next to him, as well as Bai Li Changqing. As for his vice-captain Cheng Jiushin, this person had always been rather impatient, and this time, knowing that Zhang Yi was going to be the leader of the operation, he had quite a few complaints. So Gao Changkong sent him away. Bai Li Changqing looked at Gao Changkong and said with some regret, in terms of ability, you are more suitable than Zhang Yi to take command this time. But he didn't say the second half of his sentence because that would involve some complicated things within Blizzard City. Bai Li Changqing had no way to change any of that. It was not that he looked down on Zhang Yi. It was just that as far as a commander was concerned, Zhang Yi was indeed no match for Gao Changkong. It could even be said that this was something Zhang Yi himself admitted. However, Gao Changkong smiled and shook his head, seemingly not caring about it. It was just that the fleeting regret in the middle of his eyes still could not be perfectly concealed. Since it's a decision made by the headquarters, there must be an intention. It's impossible for Commander Zhu to joke about the safety of the region. No matter who is going to be this commander-in-chief, I will do my best to cooperate. Bai Li Changqing smiled, it's just a name, when it really comes to the battlefield, Zhang Yi will have to rely on you as well. Gu Man's eyes revealed an annoyed look. But this title, however, is very important. Bai Li Changqing's face was somewhat helpless. That title, of course it was important. Leading a large army and defeating the Neon Ronin organization head-on, such a reputation could allow a person to quickly rise in Blizzard City, gain a lofty reputation, and have a chance to enter the center of power. He is not a person who covets reputation, and has even less interest in joining Blizzard City. Bai Li Changqing explained. Gao Changkong smiled faintly, perhaps, that's why he was chosen. Zhang Yi walked out after speaking privately with Zhu Jing and picked up Yang Xinxin who was holding flour, and the two of them went downstairs together. When they arrived at the first floor, Bai Li Changqing, who had already been waiting here for a long time, hastily waved. Hey, Zhang Yi. This way. Zhang Yi saw Gao Changkong and Gu Man, and in his heart, he wondered what kind of attitude they had. There was definitely disappointment inside Gao Changkong's heart, and there was also the possibility that he might harbor a grudge against Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi was well prepared, but since he was going to besiege Eclipse Moon, an exchange with the head of the reincarnation squad could not be avoided. Zhang Yi walked over and greeted them with a smile. Captain Gao, Ms. Gu, nice to see you again. When he saw Zhang Yi, Gao Changkong's face broke into a polite smile. He extended his hand and said to Zhang Yi, congratulations, you have become the captain of the Tengu squad. From now on, we are partners, so please give me your advice. Zhang Yi saw that Gao Changkong's attitude was quite good, so naturally he didn't hold back and shook his hand. My position as captain is only temporary, and I will step down after completing my mission. I will need Captain Gao's guidance for the next operation. Gao Changkong said, not at all. Are you free today? I'd like to invite you to dinner, and we can talk about our future cooperation. Zhang Yi, of course, had no reason to refuse. Gao Changkong treated them to a nice restaurant in Area A. Gao Changkong explains the reason for their visit in a straightforward manner. I have already received news from Commander Zhu about Captain Zhang. Among the Eclipse Moon's mutants, some can predict the future, while Captain Zhang can block the other party's abilities. Therefore, I hope to use this to formulate a battle plan. Because I believe that the most important reason why the Heavenly God Squad was defeated by Eclipse Moon was that the other party knew all of their actions. I don't want to repeat the same mistake, so I would like to ask for your support in this area during the operation. Zhang Yi nodded after hearing this and also said, I am not a mutant who is good at attacking. The commander let me lead the team simply because I am a relatively steady person and also have the factor of blocking the opponent's prophecies. So when we fight against Eclipse Moon, we will have to rely on you guys for combat power. Gao Changkong gave a slight smile. Speaking of which, the premise of cooperation is mutual understanding. And we don't know each other's abilities very well. He put down his glass of white wine and said, then let me introduce my abilities first. Zhang Yi's eyes flashed with surprise. Gao Changkong was going to reveal his abilities to him? That was the most important secret of every mutant, and even close relatives might not know it. This is embarrassing, that's your precious secret, Zhang Yi said politely. Unexpectedly, Gao Changkong said, actually, my abilities are not really a secret. Seeing Zhang Yi's suspicious look, Gao Changkong explained, in Blizzard City, we have complete information on the mutants, especially our captains. There are no secrets from the higher-ups. Everyone works in the same place, and we often come into contact with each other. There are also opportunities to fight and cooperate. So it's impossible to keep everything a secret. Besides, my abilities are a bit special. Even if they were to be discovered, I wouldn't worry about it. When Gao Changkong said this, Zhang Yi glanced at Bai Li Changqing next to him without being noticed. Bai Li Changqing laughed and said, I can testify to this, it's true. An ability you're not afraid of people knowing about? Zhang Yi was intrigued. To be fair, Bian Zhengwu and Deng Shentong's abilities were also like this. Because they were too powerful, even if you knew about their abilities, it would be difficult to crack them. Unless you were a mutant with the same level of ability. I'm all ears, Zhang Yi said. Gao Changkong smiled and spoke of his ability. My ability is reincarnation. Ability codename, Death is Reincarnation. That's right, it's the Reincarnation Squad's version of reincarnation. I can reincarnate between life and death. Whenever I die, I will return to a period of time before death. Well, as for the time period, I'll keep that a little secret for now. Anyway, generally speaking, I cannot be killed. And I can collect information in advance through reincarnation. This can enable me to avoid danger and effectively collect information about my opponents. After listening, Zhang Yi let out a long breath on the spot. Another ability user who cannot be killed. There was a Phoenix Run before, and here comes another reincarnation ability user. What the hell? Starting from scratch in the end of the Ice Age? These guys at the captain level are one monster after another. Hearing Zhang Yi's feelings, Bai Li Changqing couldn't help but retort, you're the same. Gao Changkong smiled and looked at Zhang Yi. My ability, in a sense, can actually circumvent the other party's prophecy. He crossed his arms on the table, looking confident. I've studied the other party's ability. Although there is the law of cause and effect involved, the scope of her prophecies is limited. Otherwise, the female ninja would not have been killed by Deng Shentong, and the other four would not have been killed by you. Therefore, the opponent's abilities are not omniscient. If I encounter them, I can use the first opportunity to test their abilities and tactics. Then trigger the cycle and change the strategy to deal with it. Zhang Yi keenly discovered something. Your ability can only be triggered once? Gao Changkong nodded approvingly. Good insight. My ability can only be triggered once a day, starting from the time the cycle is triggered and ending when the same time is reached for the second time. He gave an example. For example, if I activate my ability at this moment, it will be 12:51 noon. Then the next time I can activate my ability, I will have to wait until the timeline reaches the present again, and then another day will pass, and I can only use it at 12:51 tomorrow. All of this is recorded in the records of the greater region, and I have no need to deceive you. So please believe me. Even so, it was still a very perverted ability. Bai Li Changqing added in a timely manner, but so far, there have been very few people who can make him trigger his abilities. It is often the case that he triggers his abilities on his own initiative. Zhang Yi nodded knowingly. He looked at Gao Changkong and said, in other words, even without using your abilities, you are very strong in your own right. Gao Changkong smiled broadly and shrugged his shoulders. If you want to be the captain, you can't rely on tricks alone. You need real strength. Zhang Yi looked at Gao Changkong, who was sitting opposite to him, with gentle eyes. Gao Changkong was tall and handsome. The sunshine and energetic feeling that basketball players naturally exude easily gave people a positive and optimistic impression. Zhang Yi took a sip in silence. Then let me talk about my abilities too. He briefly introduced his abilities. Except for the hidden skill Void Spear, he talked about all the other skills. There was no point in concealing this information, and the Jiangnan region had already collected it a long time ago. By sharing it, he gave the impression of being open and honest. However, he only talked about the effects of his supernatural powers, but avoided talking about his actual abilities. For example, how much destructive power Divine Might had, and what the maximum attack was that the dimensional gate could absorb and accommodate. And the distance of the space shuffle, and so on. He knew full well that it was the same as if he were concealing the Void Spear skill and the strength of his supernatural powers. Gao Changkong must have also been hiding things from him. Just knowing the characteristics of the ability without knowing the specific data may not necessarily allow you to do something about it. Gao Changkong also didn't tell him how long the ability Death is Reincarnation could be used before returning to death. Gao Changkong and Gu Man were silent for a moment after listening to Zhang Yi's explanation. Because based on the information provided by Zhang Yi, it can only be reflected that Zhang Yi is a mutant who is good at defense. If defense is 10, then attack can only be 1. Divine Might is certainly powerful, but other methods of attack are lackluster. More often than not, Zhang Yi's methods of attack rely heavily on firearms. However, they do not know the numerical value of Zhang Yi's current strength. Therefore, they do not understand how lethal Zhang Yi's combat power is with the origin bullets, given his exclusive weapon Thunderstrike, the bonus from his supernatural powers in space, and his adaptation of the origin bullets. Both sides gave a brief account of their respective abilities, and they got to know each other a little. In this way, even if there is cooperation in the future, they will not be ignorant of each other. In short, I hope that we can cooperate well and complete this mission together. The Eclipse Moon must be destroyed, at any time, without fail. Only by destroying the Eclipse Moon will there be peace. Gao Changkong said to Zhang Yi with a serious face. Zhang Yi nodded, I feel the same way. The few of them had a simple meal and had a pretty good chat. After all, there was Bai Li Changqing, the lubricant, in the middle, so even though Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin didn't really like talking to strangers, the atmosphere wasn't too awkward. This meal was Gao Changkong's way of showing Zhang Yi his stance. It proved that he didn't resent Zhang Yi for losing command of the operation. It wasn't just for Zhang Yi's benefit, but also for the Blizzard City executives to see, as a show of respect. After the meal, Zhang Yi took Yang Xinxin back to the villa. Yang Xinxin, who couldn't help but ask, "Brother, do you have any opinion of Gao Changkong?" Zhang Yi heard this and looked up, smiling faintly. "It's not that I have an opinion. What kind of person is he and what does it matter to me? It's just that I'm very interested in his abilities." Zhang Yi sat on the sofa, and Yang Xinxin sat next to him tenderly, her big eyes staring at his profile, shining like countless little stars. Zhang Yi leaned back against the sofa and said leisurely, "I was just wondering how far back his ability, death reincarnation, can be reset to. If every time he is reborn, he can go back 3 days, it would also mean that he would have 3 times the time of normal people. 7 days ago, that's 7 times. 10 days ago, that's 10 times." Zhang Yi's eyes were solemn. In that case, as long as he keeps using this ability, he will gain much more time than other people. Plus the ability to know the future trajectory in advance, there are simply countless things he can accomplish. Even if he just uses it to improve his own strength, even if his talent is poor, he can become a first-class master. Not to mention that he is a basketball superstar in his own right, with a physique that surpasses the ordinary. Therefore, Zhang Yi folded his arms. This supernatural ability to bend time must have given him incredible power. This was what Zhang Yi was worried about. Anyone who masters the rules of time represents infinite possibilities. Their growth rate is far faster than that of others. Zhang Yi also somewhat understood why Gao Changkong was able to climb from the lowest level to his current position. But at this moment, Yang Xinxin's mouth curled up slightly. She tilted her head slightly mischievously and asked slowly, "But, brother, do you really believe that Gao Changkong has the abilities you described?" Zhang Yi was slightly startled when he heard this. Gao Changkong definitely won't reveal everything to me. But in terms of abilities, there's no point in him lying to me. After all, his abilities are not a big secret among the upper echelons of Blizzard City. Yang Xinxin's dark gem-like eyes twinkled. "Well, nevertheless, I always felt that his abilities were very strange. Human beings really have the ability to reverse the timeline of this world?" This sentence brought Zhang Yi's thoughts back to the time of his rebirth. Zhang Yi nodded. Maybe it really is possible. Yang Xinxin didn't understand why Zhang Yi was so sure. But according to what he said, he can freely distort time and constantly change history within the cycle of a day. This is no longer the realm of humans. It is the realm of gods, Yang Xinxin said slowly. Zhang Yi was silent for a long time. He then said, "Perhaps his limit is not just Delta-level mutant. But who knows?" He shrugged his shoulders. It was difficult to verify the truth of other people's supernatural abilities, especially those involving the time domain. After all, he could reincarnate, but you couldn't. It seems like Zhang Yi can too. However, at the moment, he had yet to discover the activation code for this ability of his. He couldn't just let himself die and conduct an experiment, could he? That would be ridiculous. Anyway, there's no need to think about that right now. I'm the captain of the Tengu squad, and I need to meet with my team members next. I also need to have the Black Robe squad and Heavenly God squad train together in preparation for the Eclipse Moon, which will appear again at some point. Zhang Yi had no personal grudges against the reincarnation squad. So there was no need to be overly cautious with them. At most, they might compete with him for credit when they carried out missions. But Zhang Yi was certain of one thing: they did not disagree on the matter of eliminating the Eclipse Moon. Just as Zhang Yi was pondering how to integrate the squad in Blizzard City, a movement to create a god around him quietly kicked off. After 3 days, Deng Yuanbo called on Zhang Yi to come over to see Liang Yu's results. Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin arrived at Deng Manor. They waited inside the living room of Deng Yuanbo. Although Zhang Yi's face tried to remain calm, the way he kept glancing at the doors exposed the nervousness and anticipation he felt inside. What would Liang Yu look like? He wondered, a little excited and a little nervous. Soon after, Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin saw Liang Yu. She was still the same as she was at the beginning, with her heroic eyebrows raised, her hair tied into a high ponytail, and a white power suit that encapsulated her well-trained body. It seems that not much has changed. But the nature of people sometimes requires that we look beyond appearances to the essence. Zhang Yi knows that her inner self must have definitely changed. As soon as she saw Liang Yu, Yang Xinxin ran over excitedly and gave her teacher a hug. "Teacher Liang, are you okay?" Although Zhang Yi also wanted to go over and ask Liang Yu about the experiment, he saw Deng Yuanbo and Lianqing next to her and held back his urge. He walked slowly up to Liang Yu. "How are you feeling? Are you okay?" Liang Yu looked up and met Zhang Yi's gaze. She smiled slightly and nodded. "I feel in top form right now. I have to thank Mr. Deng for his help." Zhang Yi thought to himself, it seems that Liang Yu's strength has improved tremendously. There were still outsiders present, so he didn't go into too much detail. Instead, he smiled and looked at Deng Yuanbo. "Mr. Deng, thank you." Deng Yuanbo smiled faintly and said, "This is what we agreed upon. I said that if you could get rid of Eclipse Moon, we would both benefit." Zhang Yi laughed and said, "Since you put it that way, I won't hold back." Looking at Liang Yu, Zhang Yi suddenly thought, if he could get everyone around him to go through the Deng family's transformation, would his team's overall strength increase by several levels? With this thought in his heart, Zhang Yi spoke up while Deng Yuanbo needed him. After listening to him, Deng Yuanbo's smile grew wider. At this time, the butler Lianqing next to him explained for him, "Mr. Zhang, you may not understand, to enhance the strength of a mutant, we need to consume a lot of resources. And the process of this experiment is not something that everyone can bear." Zhang Yi sighed, "I see. I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Deng Yuanbo said with a smile, although we cannot make them make such great progress in a short time like Miss Liang, we can still improve their bodies and enhance some of their abilities. Zhang Yi smiled slightly, and he had already made up his mind. He had only asked a few questions, and he knew better than to directly make a request without knowing the rules. This was because this could only be a trait of interests, and he had no relationship with the Deng family, so they would not help him for no reason. I understand. I hope we have the opportunity to work together in the future. Deng Yuanbo and Zhang Yi exchanged a few casual greetings, and he did not make any demands. He was as kind as an NPC who simply came to give buffs. However, Zhang Yi did not dare to underestimate him in the slightest. This kind of old fox is much better at playing power games than him. Zhang Yi found an excuse and left with his people. Deng Yuanbo did not stop him, but instead warmly asked Lianqing to see them out. He also asked the Deng family car to take them back to where they were staying. Before leaving, he gave Zhang Yi a gold pin, and told him that it was a relic from Deng Shintong's lifetime. If you wear it, it will be a lot easier to integrate the members of the Heavenly God Squad. Zhang Yi couldn't help but feel that Deng Yuanbo had really thought of everything. However, for him, there was no need to borrow strength to tame a few subordinates. Along the way, because the Deng family's driver was there, Zhang Yi didn't ask Liang Yu too many questions. But once they got home, Zhang Yi couldn't stop talking. He asked curiously, what was the Deng family experiment all about? What is your current level of strength, and have you experienced any physical discomfort? Seeing Zhang Yi's face full of anticipation and nervousness, she smiled. The experiment was very strange. They put me in a transparent plexiglass chamber. Then they injected me with some medicine and performed some very strange operations. Recalling the process of the experiment, Liang Yu felt a chill run down her spine. She suddenly shivered. I felt like I was reborn. Literally, I was reborn. Over the course of 3 days, my skin was completely replaced, and even my blood and organs showed obvious changes. Because I had to stay awake for such a long time, the feeling was more than anyone could bear. Liang Yu's face was very serious. Zhang Yi couldn't help but swallow. Is it that painful? Liang Yu nodded. If you have poor physical fitness or weak willpower, you may die halfway through the experiment or have a mental breakdown. Yang Xinxin couldn't help but walk over and gently embrace her. Teacher Liang, I didn't realize you had suffered so much. Yang Xinxin's tone was full of concern. She still has great respect for her simple and kind teacher. Zhang Yi couldn't help but feel silent. When Deng Yuanbo told him about this matter, he didn't mention the pain endured during the experiment. But he did say that there were high requirements for the candidates. And he specifically asked for Liang Yu. Zhang Yi originally thought that was because he only brought Liang Yu and Yang Xinxin to Blizzard City. Now it seems that it is not that simple at all. Because this kind of experiment that forces growth is not something that the average person can bear. Zhang Yi looked at Liang Yu and said, "You've suffered." But Liang Yu shook her head with a smile. This was my own choice in the first place, and they did remind me before the experiment. Although the process was very painful, the gains I've made are also enormous. She clenched her fists, surprised by the newfound strength she felt in herself. For the first time in her life, she felt that this body was like a sports car full of fuel, ready to unleash its full power. Zhang Yi stared at Liang Yu and began to gauge her true combat power. Liang Yu's combat skills needed no further elaboration, she was already at full capacity. The only shortcoming was that she had consumed too few mutants, resulting in only an average delta level of combat power. According to Zhang Yi's deduction, Liang Yu's previous comprehensive ability level was actually similar to that of Xiao Honglian, Xing Tian, and others. So now, what level is her combat power? A plan quietly appeared in Zhang Yi's mind. A wicked smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I think I should find you an opponent for you to test. The opponent Zhang Yi was talking about was naturally a member of his Tengu squad. The next day, in the training room on the first basement floor of the combat center, Zhang Yi called on all members of the Tengu squad to gather here. He called their first full meeting of the Tengu squad. Needless to say, the Black Robe squad got along well with Zhang Yi, and with Bai Li Changqing's help, everyone naturally accepted Zhang Yi's leadership. However, it was a different story with the Heavenly God squad. Deng Shintong had a very strong influence on them. He is powerful, exceptionally talented, and has a very strong personality. Zhu Jing once said in person that he has a great character. Such a captain is also a wealthy second-generation heir who is very generous with his subordinates. Who wouldn't like him? Not long after Deng Shintong died in battle, an unidentified outsider from the outer city took his place. The remaining 3 members of the Heavenly God squad were all a little resentful. The huge training ground was very empty. On weekdays, each squad would train here. The agreed time was 9 o'clock in the morning. Zhang Yi brought Yang Xinxin, Liang Yu, and Flower to the training ground. The 6 members of the Black Robe squad had already arrived on time. Bai Li Changqing waved enthusiastically and greeted Zhang Yi. Captain, everyone on our side is here. Wu Di and the others looked at Zhang Yi with mixed emotions in their eyes. Not long ago, Zhang Yi was just a leader of a faction in Tianhai City. But now he has become their leader. It can only be said that after the end of the world, more and more people can quickly rise to power based on their own abilities. The situation of respecting seniority is becoming less and less. Zhang Yi walked over and scanned the scene with his eyes, only seeing the people from the Black Robe squad. However, he did not see the 3 members of the Heavenly God squad on the list. He already knew in his heart that those 3 guys must be dissatisfied with him being the captain and deliberately giving him a hard time. Zhang Yi's mind flashed with information about those 3 people. As captain, he had already figured out the abilities of each member of the team. He also knew those three very well. The three who survived were Yi, Shui Miao, and Luing Hao. Of these three, Luing Hao was the mutant at the bottom of the Heavenly God Squad's rankings. Yi was near the middle of the pack, while Shui Miao was in the bottom half. The fact that the three of them were still alive was largely due to luck. During that battle, the top experts of the Heavenly God Squad had gone off to pick the toughest opponents. It was only when Deng Shintong died in battle and headquarters ordered them to retreat in time that they managed to save their lives. Zhang Yi pretended to look at his watch. It was 8:52, 8 minutes before the time he had set. Zhang Yi walked slowly up to the group and said indifferently, "Let's wait for the others." After that, he didn't say much. Wu Di stood leaning against the equipment rack and said to Kongshin next to him with a grin, "You'll see. Those guys from the Heavenly God Squad must be trying to show Zhang Yi up." Kongshin shook his head. The ones from the Heavenly God Squad have always been like this, never taking others seriously. Although the mission to encircle and annihilate Eclipse Moon had failed, it was difficult to quickly adjust to the arrogance and conceit they had cultivated over time. People are always used to basking in the glory of the past. Zhang Yi waited until after 9 o'clock, but still did not see the three of them arrive at the scene. A sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. Then he clapped his hands. "Everyone come over, I have something to say." Bai Li Changqing led the members of the Black Robe Squad to Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi reached out his hand and introduced Yang Xinxin and Liang Yu to them. Everyone is familiar with each other, so I won't introduce them again. From now on, they will also be members of the Tengbu Squad. Bai Li Changqing and the others looked at Liang Yu and Yang Xinxin, their eyes full of surprise. Because when they were in Tianhai City, Liang Yu's combat effectiveness was far from reaching the top level. At best, she was on the same level as Wei Dinghai and Xiao Honglian. As for Yang Xinxin, she wasn't even a mutant in the past. Everyone was a little suspicious, but no one voiced any objections. Because in the Great Mutation era, people should be treated with respect after just a few days apart. You never know how strong an ordinary person will become after awakening his supernatural powers. Zhang Yi lifted his wrist and glanced at his Rolex. He asked lightly, "Bai Li, according to the investigation team's regulations, what happens if you're late for a gathering?" Bai Li Changqing let out a ha-ha laugh. "According to the regulations, you'll receive a severe punishment and be publicly scolded in front of the entire team. The investigation team is a special forces unit, and the missions they carry out are all of great importance, and may even endanger the safety of the entire Jiangnan region. Therefore, their discipline is even stricter." Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow and said meaningfully, "Oh? The punishment is quite severe. For those three guys on the list who didn't show up, let's just follow this through." The members of the Black Robe Squad looked at each other with a gloating expression. Because according to the rules, if you get 2 major demerits, you will be expelled from the investigation squad. Is this how Zhang Yi wants to play on his first day? Bai Li Changqing, however, said in a deep voice, "Yes. Discipline is discipline. Once violated, there is no reason for it, and you will be punished. This is the iron law of soldiers." At this moment, a cold voice suddenly came from above. "Hey, excuse me. Who's late?" Zhang Yi's smile grew more and more obvious as he looked up at the top of his head. On the second floor of the training ground, 3 men looked down, each with defiance written all over their faces. This was contempt for the new captain, who they did not look upon favorably. "Yo, you're Chaos, right? What a lame name. If you're going to imitate others and become the captain, at least don't make such elementary mistakes. You can't achieve anything by scaring people with a big demerit every now and then." The 2 people next to him also let out a mocking laugh. Zhang Yi was unmoved and continued to say to Bai Li Changqing, "Just do it according to the rules. Let's just say they were late." The 3 men's faces suddenly changed. They didn't expect Zhang Yi to be so bold. A foreigner from the outer city, new to the area, had shit luck and became the temporary captain. Yet he really dared to look down on them? "Hey, what are you doing? Are we here?" Yi, one of the 3, shouted down. "I didn't see it, so it doesn't count," Zhang Yi said indifferently. "You have 10 seconds to stand in front of me, or else you can forget about being in my team." A few bottom feeders in the Heavenly God Squad had the nerve to act like a smartass. If he didn't show them a thing or two about respect, they would never know who was the boss. The 3 men's faces turned extremely ugly. They had wanted to teach Zhang Yi a lesson, but Zhang Yi had gone too far. Zhang Yi looked at the plain Rolex on his hand and counted the movement of the second hand. The 3 of them did not dare to continue playing with fire. Shui Miao grabbed the arms of Yi He and Luing Hao, and their entire bodies soared into the air, a whirlwind suddenly surrounding them. The 3 of them landed from a great height, safely landing in front of Zhang Yi and the others. Zhang Yi looked at the second hand and said with some regret, "What a pity." Yi He and the others stared at Zhang Yi, and anyone could tell from their defiant expressions that they were not going to give up so easily. Yi crossed his arms and said to Zhang Yi, "Chaos, you have a lot of authority, don't you? Ever since you took over, you've been bullying us. Very impressive." His words were full of sarcasm. He deliberately stressed the word chaos. He believed that people who chose such nicknames were all weaklings. The truly powerful should choose a majestic nickname like their captains. And Deng Shentong's exclusive nickname was Erlang Shenyang Jian. Zhang Yi looked coldly at the three people in front of him. This situation was completely within his expectations. The members of the Black Robe Squad didn't say anything, but they put on expressions as if they were enjoying a show. Although they knew that Zhang Yi was very strong, it was not enough to be a good captain. You also need to have the ability to control people. If Zhang Yi couldn't control these three people today, he could forget about leading them to surround and attack the Eclipse Moon in the future. Zhang Yi stared at the three people, his eyes cold like a sword. In the end, his eyes fell on Yi Yi. It was obvious that Yi Yi was the leader of these three people. If you take him down, the other two will also behave themselves. Did I tell you to speak? Zhang Yi did not yell like a normal instructor would, for fear of hurting his voice. He just said in a cold tone, next time, before you speak, yell, sir. You may only speak when I give you permission. Yi raised the corners of his mouth, sir. Shut up. Zhang Yi yelled angrily, interrupting him. Did I give you permission to speak? You. Yi was also furious. He didn't like Zhang Yi, who had been suddenly promoted to captain. Seeing that Zhang Yi was deliberately targeting him, he simply stopped pretending. What's the big deal? With someone like you as captain, I quit being a member of this bullshit investigation squad. Zhang Yi didn't even raise his eyelids. If you don't want to work anymore, you can just leave now. Anyway, with fewer people, he can ask old Zhu to replace him with some others. Yin Yunwei has a lot of people, so it shouldn't be difficult to find a few more experts. Xue Miao and Lu Yinghao, however, had changed color and quickly took Yi Yi by the arm, persuading him, don't be impulsive. If you leave, you'll be falling into his trap. Even if we're leaving, we can't leave like this. Otherwise, we'll lose the reputation of the Heavenly God Squad, won't we? Xue Miao and Lu Yinghao's family backgrounds were not comparable to Yi Yi's. Even if Yi Yi walked out of here, at the very least, his family could arrange for him to work in another position. But for Xue Miao and Lu Yinghao, they were the pillars of their families. Once they were no longer members of the investigation squad, the quality of life for their entire family would be greatly reduced. Playing naked resignation is not for everyone. You need to know your own worth. Therefore, the two strongly discouraged Yi Yi from pushing it too far. They were only following Yi Yi's lead because they wanted to fight for more rights and benefits when they joined a new investigation team. When it came to the Heavenly God Squad, a look of pain flashed in Yi Yi's eyes. The glory of the past and the glorious and majestic figure of Deng Shentong emerged in his mind. At the moment, Deng Shentong and the other team members' bodies had not even cooled, and they were thrown away like trash and put into a mixed squad. How could Yi not be in pain? He even felt as if the region had abandoned him. Otherwise, why would they choose an outsider from an insignificant city as captain? The members of the Black Robe Squad next to them were all watching with amusement. Yi gritted his teeth and made a decision in his heart. Even if he was to leave, he could not go like this, to avoid being a laughing stock in the future. So he pointed at Zhang Yi and said, "Hey, aren't you the captain of the Tengbu squad? Let us see if you are qualified to be the captain right now." Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows. "Oh? Do I need you to tell me if I am qualified or not? Who do you think you are? You don't try to win by words." Yi stared at Zhang Yi coldly and sneered, "Among the rules and regulations of the investigation team, there is one. The captain of the investigation squad must accept the challenge of a member of the squad, and if he loses, he will lose his position as captain. This challenge cannot be refused. Right now, I am still a member of the Tengbu squad, so," the smile on the corner of his mouth grew even wider, "accept my challenge." Chaos. Zhang Yi was silent for a moment. He wasn't afraid, but he was a little confused. Is it true that people who have been in a large unit for a long time tend to become stupid? You want to fight me? Zhang Yi pointed at his nose and asked in disbelief. No matter how weak I think you were personally appointed as captain by Zhu Zheng, so even if you use your toes to think, it's obvious that you can't be weak, right? Yi snorted. Of course not. It wouldn't look good if I fight you alone. It'll be the three of us against you. Zhang Yi, do you dare to accept? Upon hearing this, Bai Li Changqing and the others immediately showed an interested expression on their faces. They knew that Zhang Yi was very strong. but they didn't know just how strong Zhang Yi was. 3 members of the Heavenly God Squad against Zhang Yi alone, this match would be very interesting. And Zhang Yi, would he accept? Bai Li Changqing frowned slightly, weighing in his heart as to whether he could win against these 3 if he were in Zhang Yi's shoes. And the answer he ultimately came up with was not very encouraging. The members of the investigation squad are all elites. One-on-one is okay, but if the 3 of them cooperate with each other, their strength will be mutually enhanced. As the vice captain, Bai Li Changqing, unless he can restrain their abilities, there is no way he can defeat all 3 of them. Zhang Yi raised his eyelids and said indifferently, "If you want to die, I can grant you that wish. This battle is a battle to establish his authority, and he must fight. If I don't fight, it will be hard to lead the team in the future." A look of ecstasy appeared on the faces of the 3 men. They had never thought that Zhang Yi would actually dare to accept their challenge. Yi smiled sinisterly, "Fighting all 3 of us at the same time, that would require a captain-level mutant to fight us himself. But Zhang Yi doesn't really think that just because he's become captain, he has the strength of a captain, does he? This is like Bai Li Changqing, who initially became the captain of the Black Robe Squad but was not given the respect he deserved. Position and strength are not completely linked." Zhang Yi turned around and retreated to the side of the training ground. He said indifferently, "Everyone else, leave the area first." The members of the Black Robe Squad immediately left the training ground, and Liang Yu also left with Yang Xinxin. In the vast training ground, only Zhang Yi, Yi, and his 2 men were left. "My time is quite precious, so I won't bother going to the martial arts field. I'll just fight you guys here. Hurry up and finish so I can go home." Zhang Yi turned to look at them, his face expressionless. In fact, the 2 realms junction had already begun to unfold around him, forming a defense that left no gaps. Yi and the others glanced at each other. Yi lowered his voice and said, "The 3 of us fighting him alone will definitely be able to defeat him. If he loses, he will have no pride left to continue being the captain. By that time, we might have a chance to use the Tengu squad to turn the tables." Xue Miao frowned, "But we don't know anything about this guy. And he might have obtained our information through the higher-ups. This is a disadvantage for us." Yi said, "That's why I want 3 people to fight him. As long as the 3 of us work well together, we have a good chance of winning against anyone below the captain level." The 3 of them cheered each other on and were determined to defeat Zhang Yi here and regain their pride. Even if they were kicked out of the team, their reputation would still be good, which would make it easier for them to join other organizations. Zhang Yi watched the 3 of them whispering and discussing tactics, and a sneering smile rose at the corner of his mouth. "Shall we begin?" After the 3 had finished their discussion, their gazes locked onto him. "Do it!" Yi growled. Lu Yinghao struck first. His 5 fingers were clenched together, and he stabbed Yi and Xue Miao in the waist. Poisonous Doctor, Lu Yinghao, trait system ability user. His bodily fluids can be turned into lethal poisons, or into potions that strengthen the body. As soon as the battle began, he injected his 2 companions with adrenaline, to increase their physical alertness, which greatly enhanced their mobility and even improved their senses by several levels. And of course, he himself was also maximally enhanced. After being enhanced, Xue Miao pulled a dagger with a bluish glow from his tactical backpack. A raging whirlwind sprang up around his body, enveloping the 3 of them. Zhang Yi, however, did not move at all and even leisurely pulled out his 2 silver pistols, the White Eagle, from dimensional space. After thinking for a moment, he loaded them with holy silver bullets. Just as he was reloading his bullets, a gust of wind rushed towards him, and the entire training ground was filled with madness. The surging air currents even had a huge impact on his vision. Xue Miao took advantage of the wind and arrived in front of Zhang Yi in an instant. Xue Miao, an ability user who has released the department, has the ability code Wind Runner and can manipulate the power of the storm. He is good at assassinations. In an instant, with the help of the gusty wind, he reached the back of Zhang Yi. The dagger in his hand, glowing with blue light, stabbed fiercely at the back of Zhang Yi's neck. Zhang Yi didn't seem to notice, and without even turning his head, he didn't make any reactionary movements. But the next moment, the dagger stabbed into a void, and the tip of the dagger suddenly disappeared into the air. Ha! Xue Miao's pupils suddenly contracted, and he sensed the danger. But his movements were too fast, and his entire right arm had already disappeared into Zhang Yi's dimensional space. "Oh no!" Xue Miao was shocked, and hurriedly tried to pull away. Although he didn't know what Zhang Yi's ability was, his intuition told him that if he entered that strange space, his ending would be very miserable. But at this moment, a black muzzle was aimed at his head. Zhang Yi didn't even turn his head, and after the huge muzzle of the white eagle was aimed at his head, he didn't hesitate to pull the trigger. Damn it! Xue Miao gritted his teeth, and the howling wind around him intensified. His figure disappeared in an instant, and when he reappeared, he was already tens of meters away. Bang! The sound of the gunshot echoed through the training ground, and the bullet hit the opposite wall, sending sparks flying. Xue Miao's eyes showed a cautious expression. Space ability? I can't even get close to attack, so how am I going to fight? He was an assassin, and his speed and strange body movements were his most advantageous weapons for killing with one strike. However, Zhang Yi was particularly good at restraining this. His defense must have a flaw. I must find his flaw first. Xue Miao thought. Xue Miao thought. Zhang Yi, however, raised the corners of his mouth and looked at Xue Miao, who had fled in a panic, with a smile. That shot was just a warning. That warning was a really close call. He almost couldn't help but kill Xue Miao. Out of instinct, Zhang Yi was particularly sensitive to attacks from behind. But before he pulled the trigger, he remembered that these guys would cause him trouble if they died. So he didn't use his ability to accelerate 20 times. Otherwise, within less than 7 steps, his gun would be fast and accurate. Xue Miao couldn't escape no matter how fast he was. Just a small lesson will do. Zhang Yi rarely showed compassion. Xue Miao immediately conveyed his thoughts to Yi He and Luing Hao. His ability is strange, it should be a space ability. My close-range attack was absorbed. The other dimension has no ability to actively attack, let alone absorb living creatures directly. However, once someone actively enters it, their life and death will rest firmly in Zhang Yi's hands. If Xue Miao had not reacted in time, he would already be Zhang Yi's prey. After hearing Xue Miao's words, Luing Hao said solemnly, "Let me test him." He took out a dagger and quickly slashed his palm open. A bloody trail appeared, but no blood flowed. Instead, streams of bloody mist flew out of the wound like swarms of insects, turning into a red mist that then swept towards Zhang Yi along with the hurricane. Luing Hao's own blood could turn into a deadly poison that penetrated the intestines. It only needs to come into contact with human skin to quickly penetrate and kill the other person. The red mist instantly surrounded Zhang Yi. Luing Hao tried to use this method to test out Zhang Yi's weak points. However, Zhang Yi remained calm, slowly raising his hands, and the 2 white eagles began to fire at their bodies. As long as they don't die, no matter how serious the injuries are, the medical center in Blizzard City can save them. If they are disabled, so be it. The red mist disappeared completely into Zhang Yi's dimensional space, causing no harm to Zhang Yi. However, the holy silver bullets, like streaks of light, pierced the storm and shot sharply at the 3 of them. The holy silver bullets, precision shots, and a 20-fold increase in speed combined to create a killing move with a range that seemed to extend infinitely. A move that even high-level Delta mutants would be afraid to face head-on. The holy silver bullet shot at the 3 people, who quickly dodged. The bullets shot out like a silver rainstorm, making it impossible to defend against. Fortunately, all 3 had been enhanced with adrenaline by Luing Hao, which made their reactions fast enough. Therefore, they narrowly avoided the first round of shooting, but it was also quite embarrassing. Can't you find his weak spot? Impossible. As long as he's human, he will definitely have a weakness. Yi said with unyielding determination. A dark shadow flickered beneath his feet, like an evil spirit waiting in the wings. However, he had not yet found Zhang Yi's weak point, and could not act lightly. Doing so would only reveal his own hand. However, Bai Li Changqing saw this scene and shook his head helplessly. There's one thing they don't know: if they knew, they wouldn't be so foolish as to challenge Zhang Yi. Liang Yu looked at him and said, "What is it?" Bai Li Changqing looked at Zhang Yi in the middle of the field, who was calm and collected and indifferent to whatever kind of attack he faced. He said slowly, "In the official information, Zhang Yi's ability code name is Absolute Defense. The abilities of these 3 people are like free meals for him. There's only one way to break through Zhang Yi's ability, and that is to use extremely powerful strength to break through the threshold of dimensional space and absorb energy all at once. This causes the dimensional gates to temporarily become ineffective. However, in terms of Zhang Yi's current strength, the only way to do this is for an extremely powerful ability user in the release department or the trait system, and they must be on the same level as him, or even above him. This is the strength of a captain-level mutant who specializes in defense. Bai Li Changqing let out a sigh. Zhang Yi may not necessarily be able to kill his opponents when fighting them. However, he is extremely difficult to kill. Zhang Yi's gaze was calm as he stared at the three people in front of him, and the bullets in his hand were fired mercilessly. The White Eagle pistol is mainly used for close combat, which is more convenient. However, in terms of power, it is less than 1/10 of Thunderstrike. However, Zhang Yi does not dare to use Thunderstrike easily, especially when sparring with his teammates. He was afraid that he would blow these people to pieces if he wasn't careful. Even so, the three men were in a terrible state of disarray as they fled. Xue Miao's divine movement technique was completely useless against Zhang Yi. Even if he could get close, he couldn't find a weak spot to attack. Lu Yinghao's ability was even more useless. He could only release poison through physical means, and Zhang Yi was immune to this method. Only Yi He had not yet activated his ability and was biding his time. However, Zhang Yi had all their information in his head. Yi He, Release Department Mutant, ability code name, Phantom Killer. He can kill using shadows, with a range of 300 meters. He can also use shadows to switch places with people. In essence, he is also an assassin. Assassins like nothing more than to wait for their moment. However, if he is facing a mutant whose main focus is defense, then his ability becomes incredibly useless. Of course, they can also choose to escape. If it were in the middle of a battlefield, Zhang Yi would not like to chase after the enemy. However, right now, they are all in a training ground as big as 4 basketball courts. Yi He and the other two cannot escape if they want to challenge Zhang Yi. Then they will just be 3 sitting ducks. From the very beginning, Zhang Yi had everything calculated in his head. If he wasn't 100% sure he could win this battle, he wouldn't have accepted the challenge of 1-on-3. Bang! 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 The holy silver bullet's light continued to cut through space, and the 3 of them were already using all their strength just to dodge the bullet's trajectories. And the adrenaline is like a stimulant, it's more like an enhanced stimulant that can temporarily enhance a person's overall ability. However, the price is that after the effect wears off, the body will be in a very weak state. Nowadays, Zhang Yi's bullets have forced them to overdraw the effect. Damn, there's no way to get close. And even if we could get close, we don't know how to break through his defenses. What the hell is that power? Is there really no weak spot? The 3 of them had never come into contact with Zhang Yi before. If they had watched the match between Zhang Yi and Wu Di, they would have some idea of Zhang Yi's abilities. In the eyes of Bai Li Changqing, Liang Yu, and the others, this battle was very comical. Yi He and the others were like 3 monkeys, jumping up and down to avoid Zhang Yi's bullet attacks. They were at a loss, and had no good way to defend against Zhang Yi's bullets. However, Zhang Yi had an overwhelming amount of bullets in his hands, and there were simply too many to use up. He had Liu Karen and also had control over the vast resources of Tianhai City, which was equivalent to having an inexhaustible arsenal. Zhang Yi is releasing an ocean of bullets. Liang Yu said helplessly, covering her head with her hands. His real moves, whether Divine Might or Void Spear, can instantly kill the 3 in front of him no matter which one is used. But now Zhang Yi is only using a gun against them, as if an adult was teasing 3 naughty children. She even felt a little sorry for these 3 arrogant guys. After 2 rounds of design, Yi He and the others felt extremely suffocated. But the speed of their bodies also slowed down as the effects of the adrenaline wore off. Xue Miao was the first to be shot, and his leg was pierced by the holy silver bullet, leaving a bullet hole that went through the front and back. Ah! He let out a painful cry, and his body fell directly to the ground. Zhang Yi aimed his gun at his head, and then shot it at the floor next to his ear. The smoke billowed, and Xue Miao was so scared that cold sweat poured down his face. No, 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 I give up, I give up. He just wanted to negotiate some benefits with Zhang Yi, and had no intention of really fighting to the death with Zhang Yi. So when he saw the situation was not good at this time, he immediately came out and defected. Seeing that Xue Miao had surrendered, Yi He and Lu Yinghao were also anxious. As the weakest member of the Heavenly God Squad, Lu Yinghao knew that the general trend could not be defied, and decisively clicked to surrender. Captain, I admit defeat. I definitely am not your match. He raised his hands and obediently retreated to the sidelines. Life is about being happy and having fun, not about risking your life. Yi gritted his teeth and muttered angrily, useless. Under his feet, his shadow twisted and deformed at will, and then by using the position interchange between the human body and the shadow, he precisely avoided Zhang Yi's barrage of bullets shot round after round. Zhang Yi couldn't help but admire him a little. This guy is worthy of being a mid-level member of the Heavenly God Squad. He really does have some skills. Zhang Yi, although here you have taken advantage of the rules to gain the upper hand, but in the battlefield, can you keep hiding out there, never coming out? If I were to flee, what would you do? Yi sneered, unable to find Zhang Yi's weak point. He still felt unconvinced. He believed that Zhang Yi had taken advantage of the geographical advantage. However, he did not understand that a true master knows how to make good use of everything around them. Good use of everything around them. Zhang Yi heard this and silently put down the two guns in his hands. I was going to solve this problem in a simple manner, but all I got in return was your arrogance. Fine, I'm not going to pretend anymore, I'm going to show you my cards. Zhang Yi let out a long sigh. The light was already condensing in the middle of his right eye. When he lowered his right hand and looked at Yi, an aura of death instantly enveloped his body. Yi broke out in a layer of white, sweat-covered hair. He quickly used his shadow to move his body 300 meters away. But Zhang Yi quickly turned around, his eyes still fixed on his position. The displacement ability also has a cooldown time. Each activation requires another 10 seconds before it can be used again. This time, he was locked in by Zhang Yi and there was no escape. Divine Might. Zhang Yi's right eye suddenly opened, and in the front of his vision, a huge cylindrical space instantly became distorted. Without a sound, the walls of the training ground were opened up by a huge gap. Designed specifically for training mutants, the heavy reinforced concrete was pierced through like rotten mud, creating a 3-meter-wide passage. Yi stood there in a daze, as death passed him by. He felt a cold sensation in his head, a bone-chilling cold. Zhang Yi looked at him coldly, do you want to continue? Yi stood there in a daze, unable to find the words to say for a moment. But one thought came to mind. How foolish was it to try to challenge the person in front of him? This kind of terrifying pressure and feeling of despair had only been given to him by Deng Shintong before. That was an opponent he could never defeat. However, Zhang Yi and Deng Shintong were two completely different mutants. Deng Shintong was all about offense. Zhang Yi, on the other hand, would first maintain his absolute defense before going on the offensive. However, his attacks were always calculated and always lethal. Playing with them using pistols was just teasing them. Ha ha ha. The air in the arena seemed to have frozen, but the silence was broken by loud laughter from the sidelines. Wu Di was holding his stomach, pointing a finger at Yi and resting one hand on Bai Li Changqing's arm, laughing until he was doubled over. The others looked at him and couldn't help laughing as well. Yi was a little confused, but soon he realized something was wrong. The cool feeling on the top of his head seemed to be more than just a psychological effect. He subconsciously reached out to touch his head, but it felt very slippery. His hair had been shaved off by Zhang Yi. Ow! Yi shouted in disbelief. He was at least considered a handsome man, and had a lot of female fans in Blizzard City. Now that Zhang Yi had shaved off some of his hair that he cared about the most, how could he go out in public in the future? Zhang Yi said coldly, this farce ends here. Hey, you there. He looked at Lu Yinghao. Lu Yinghao said obediently, Zhang. Captain, what are your orders? Good boy, you're quick to change your tune. Zhang Yi glanced at him. Take these two guys down for treatment. Lu Yinghao didn't dare go over to check Xue Miao's injuries until he received Zhang Yi's order. Yi slumped onto the ground in a state of despair, his face showing no sign of life. Zhang Yi, however, did not feel the least bit sorry for them. From now on, you can quit the Tengu squad whenever you want. My decision will not change. Yi looked up at Zhang Yi. His mouth opened as if he wanted to say something, but then he thought about what he had done and could not bring himself to say anything. It turned out that they were the clowns themselves. Bai Li Changqing, out of respect, came over and helped Yi up. Then he sent the three of them off from the training ground. I know a doctor who is very good at treating hair loss. He has a kind of cola there that will cure all diseases and your hair will grow back quickly. Bai Li Changqing saw the 3 members of the original Heavenly God Squad off and returned to the training ground. At this time, the members of the Black Robe Squad looked at Zhang Yi with more awe in their eyes. Zhang Yi is now much more powerful than they first understood. In particular, the kind of defense that cannot be broken, no matter how hard they think, the people there cannot find a way to deal with it. Zhang Yi looked at them and said very straightforwardly, "As you all know, the Tengu Squad was formed only as a temporary team. After we solve the problem of Eclipse Moon, the team will be disbanded. Because of this, those guys are acting even more recklessly. But here, I want to tell you, as long as this team exists, I will be its captain for as long as it exists. Anyone who makes me unhappy, I will make them even more unhappy." The atmosphere became much more serious. Zhang Yi had already proven to them three he and the others that he was not someone to be trifled with. The Heavenly God Squad has already failed in their mission to subdue the Eclipse Moon, and 8 people, including their captain, have died. I don't think you think you're much better than they were. So now you must face the problems we will encounter with the utmost seriousness. Otherwise, you will die. Bai Li Changqing nodded. He stood straight, in the standard military posture. Yes, Captain. We are already aware of this in our hearts. From the first day they joined the investigation team, they had been aware of this. Moreover, the investigation squad has always had a revolving door of members, and more than 90% of those who were eliminated died in the line of duty. Why should the investigation squad enjoy a high-level supply of resources? They have earned them with their lives. Zhang Yi nodded. It's best to have this kind of awareness. But there's no need to sacrifice in vain. My abilities are more defensive, and my personality is the same. So during combat, I will do my best to protect everyone's lives. The time of the operation is unknown, and the plan of action will need to be decided based on the occasion of the Eclipse Moon. In this regard, Vice Captain Bai Li is an expert. Zhang Yi looked at Bai Li Changqing. There was no dispute about him serving as Vice Captain. Both his strength and popularity convinced everyone. Zhang Yi said to Bai Li Changqing, "In the time to come, I hope you can strengthen the training of the team members. There can be no room for slacking." Bai Li Changqing crossed his arms and responded loudly, "Yes, Captain." In fact, over the past few months, their team's training had never let up. Even if the higher-ups looked down on their team of dissatisfied recruits, they would not give up on themselves. They were just waiting for this day, a chance to go into battle. Zhang Yi walked up to Bai Li Changqing and whispered in his ear, "As for the 3 of us, you'll have to give us some private lessons." Zhang Yi gave Bai Li Changqing a wink. It was a bit strange to say something like that in public, and as captain, his basic combat skills were definitely not as good as those of the members of the Black Robe Squad. Yang Xinxin and Liang Yu were also lacking in this area. Having Bai Li Changqing give them special training would definitely be beneficial. Bai Li Changqing paused for a moment, then smiled and replied, "Yes, as you wish." He rubbed his hands together. However, the training for the 3 of you cannot be done together with the rest of the team. There will be a big difference in the training methods and intensity. Will this affect the subsequent battle? If the training doesn't go well, the subsequent teamwork will definitely not be as tacit. Zhang Yi, however, remained calm. This is not a big deal. Just help us train well. He doesn't expect them to have the combat literacy of professional soldiers in a short period of time. Any improvement is some improvement. Oh, by the way, there's one more thing I need your help with. Zhang Yi whispered a sentence in Bai Li Changqing's ear. Bai Li Changqing was a little surprised. He looked deeply at Liang Yu and nodded slowly. Then he said to the others, "You guys go ahead and do your daily training. The captain and I have something we need to take care of." Wu Di and the others had no idea what they were up to. But now Zhang Yi and Bai Li Changqing were the captain and vice captain, and they naturally had to obey what they were told. The few of them could only resist their curiosity as they watched Zhang Yi and Bai Li Changqing lead Yang Xinxin and Liang Yu away. Zhang Yi and the others arrived at the martial arts field. Zhang Yi looked at Bai Li Changqing and said with a smile, "You've had a hard day." Bai Li Changqing glanced at Liang Yu and shrugged with a smile. "It's okay, we'll all be teammates from now on, and we should always help each other." Zhang Yi nodded, "Then, let's experiment." He led Yang Xinxin away from the martial arts field. It was quickly sealed off. As captain of the investigation squad, Zhang Yi now had the authority to request the opening of the martial arts field. The martial arts field quickly became a huge area with a radius of 5 kilometers. Bai Li Changqing and Liang Yu were the protagonists of this martial arts event. Yes, Zhang Yi wanted Liang Yu to fight Bai Li Changqing to determine her current level of strength. Of course, because it was an experiment, Zhang Yi would not let them really fight to the death. Even the weapons used were blunt weapons that had not been sharpened. Liang Yu held a blunt sword in her hand, her eyes tightly shut. The moment she opened them, an astonishing aura spread out from her, taking over the entire field. Bai Li Changqing's weapon was an alloy long stick, which he swept with one hand, also with an astonishing aura. The battle between the two began. Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin watched very carefully from above. The battle below belonged to the top-level enhanced mutants. Enhancement-type mutants are the most common type of mutant. Their enhancements are mainly flesh and blood-based, which can enhance their overall attributes. Most of them do not have abilities other than close combat. But it would be a big mistake to underestimate them because of this. Because theoretically speaking, enhancement-type mutants are one of the few beings that can kill people multiple levels above them. Even if it is only a level 2 beta-class enhancement mutant, once it gains the opportunity to get close, it can use its powerful close combat abilities to kill a level 4 delta-class expert. Add to this their terrifying vitality and self-healing abilities, and enhancement mutants have become a presence that no one dares to underestimate. And after undergoing the transformation, Liang Yu and Bai Li Changqing can be considered the current leaders in this field. Watching them fight was like watching two ancient monsters from the ancient era fighting, which was terrifying. Just as Zhang Yi was intently observing, information from the martial arts field suddenly came through his device. Zhang Yi, out of curiosity, chose to receive it, and a blue screen appeared in front of him, displaying analysis of the data of the two combatants. A look of surprise flashed in Zhang Yi's eyes. He had been to the martial arts field once before, but that time he had been a participant. However, he had thought that the martial arts field could analyze the abilities of mutants. In fact, he was right. Yang Xinxin also curiously poked her head over to look at the data analysis of Liang Yu and Bai Li Changqing. There were the two people's headshots, along with detailed analyses of their various abilities. Liang Yu, Enhancement Ability User. Weapon, Long Sword. Speed, A1 Strength, A1 Skill, S1 Supernatural Ability Index, 6,800 points. Bai Li Changqing, Enhancement Ability User. Weapon, Long Stick. Speed, A1 Strength, A2 Skill, A2 Supernatural Ability Index, 7,200 points. The above are the basic data, and there is a lot of complex analysis data that is not enough to go into detail. Zhang Yi was a little surprised. No wonder the regional headquarters can evaluate the level of mutants, they have such detailed data analysis. What the hell is an ability index? Zhang Yi asked the intelligence system in the martial arts field. The martial arts field quickly gave Zhang Yi an answer. It's similar to the combat power index. However, due to the wide variety of supernatural abilities, in addition to combat-type mutants, there are also support-type, utility-type, and many other supernatural abilities. Therefore, a comprehensive score is given based on the practicality of the ability. In other words, the ability index is not exactly equivalent to the combat power index. Take Shokir, for example. Her ability is healing, and even if her ability index reaches 10,000, she is not as good of a fighter as a mutant with an ability index of 1,000. But for mutants of the same fighting type, this ability index is close to combat effectiveness. However, it cannot be completely equated with combat effectiveness, because the restraint relationship between abilities also needs to be considered. Zhang Yi felt a little itchy inside, and he couldn't help but ask, so what is my ability index? The martial arts field quickly gave Zhang Yi the data. 5,200, Zhang Yi's eyebrows shot up. Is my ability index really that low? But he soon understood. The data the martial arts field had calculated was from the previous battle between him and Wu Di. In fact, he had not revealed his true strength in front of Blizzard City. So this ability index was not of much reference value to him. The two monsters below continued to fight, the battle wind rising up to the sky, emitting terrifying cries. Zhang Yi's inquisitive mind struck up a conversation with the martial arts field's intelligence system. He asked them about the classification of the ability index. The intelligence system gave Zhang Yi the following response: Level 1 Alpha, Ability Index 1 to 9, Level 2 Beta, 10 to 99, level 3 gamma, 100 to 999, level 4 delta, 1000 to 9999, level 5 epsilon, 10,000 to unknown. These are the current levels of supernatural ability that have been confirmed to exist in humans, and the ability index classification for them. In other words, Liang Yu and Bai Li Changqing are both currently at a high level for combat power rating. Bai Li Changqing and Liang Yu fought for a long time and neither could be declared the victor. Although both had held back and there had been no real death match, the result did show one thing: Liang Yu's potential had been greatly developed. Nowadays, she had the strength of a vice captain. The two of them very tacitly called it a day and returned to the bleachers. Bai Li Changqing took the initiative to praise Zhang Yi, saying, "I never imagined that you had such a hidden expert by your side. Her strength amazes me. If I hadn't received regional training in the past, I wouldn't have been her match in a one-on-one fight." Bai Li Changqing wasn't being modest. Liang Yu wasn't practicing martial arts for show, she was practicing real killing techniques. None of the people who could serve as bodyguards in that place were weaklings. If it came down to life and death, he wasn't sure he could defeat Liang Yu. He just had the advantage of having been trained longer by the Jiangnan region. As for Liang Yu, before she received help from the Deng family's technology, most of the time she was considered to be growing in a barbaric way. Zhang Yi nodded and looked at Liang Yu, unable to hold back the smile in his eyes. Finally, he had a combatant by his side that he could show off. "By the way, do you know anything about the ability index system?" Zhang Yi looked at Bai Li Changqing. Bai Li Changqing smiled and said, "Of course. This is a large region that uses an artificial intelligence system to evaluate the ability levels of mutants. The division of supernatural ability levels such as alpha, beta, etc., actually have clear boundaries. For example, the boundary between delta and gamma is whether or not they can master the power of mutual devouring. And the boundary between delta and epsilon is the power level of their abilities, whether or not they have reached a quantum leap. The most basic way to judge epsilon is whether it has the power to destroy a city by itself. Of course, for some mutants, their ability index will be described using indicators that apply to other mutants." Bai Li Changqing held up a finger. "However, this simple classification is too general. It cannot reflect the true abilities of mutants. There are still huge differences in level between each major classification. So many years ago, experts in the field of mutant research proposed the concept of an ability index. That is the current standard for ability indexes." Zhang Yi nodded. "This does indeed provide a more intuitive way of measuring the ability level of mutants." Bai Li Changqing asked, "Captain, do you know your own ability index?" "I don't," Zhang Yi said directly. Bai Li Changqing laughed and said, "The latest update to your ability index was after you completed the elimination of the 4 members of Eclipse Moon. The intelligence system has set your ability index at 8,200 points based on your combat record and abilities. 8,200 points, which is 1,000 points higher than Bai Li Changqing's." Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow and asked curiously, "May I ask what the ability indexes of Bian Junwu and Deng Shintong are?" Bai Li Changqing answered truthfully, "Captain Bian had 9,100 points, while Deng Shintong had 9,300 points." Zhang Yi couldn't help but laugh even harder. Bai Li Changqing thought Zhang Yi was upset that he had been underestimated. He hurriedly explained, "This is only a numerical judgment, and cannot be absolutely linked to combat effectiveness. After all, there are too many factors that determine victory or defeat on the battlefield." Zhang Yi shook his head. Bai Li Changqing didn't understand what he meant. He wasn't angry, but happy. Yes, happy. Even though he had become the captain of the investigation team, in the eyes of most people in Blizzard City, his strength was still between the levels of vice captain and captain. In other words, none of them really understood Zhang Yi's strength. Isn't that a wonderful thing? He still had hidden cards that no one knew about. Later, after Bai Li Changqing had left, Zhang Yi asked Liang Yu about it. "If you fought him, would you be confident in winning?" Because of the judgment given by the martial arts field's intelligence system, Liang Yu's ability index was lower than Bai Li Changqing's. Liang Yu did not answer the question directly. She just glanced at the unsharpened training sword in her hands and said lightly, "The sword doesn't feel right in my hands." Time passed, and Zhang Yi formulated a training plan for the Tengu squad. The members of the former Black Robe squad trained as usual, as their daily training load had not been reduced. The focus was on training Zhang Yi, Lian Yu, and Yan Xinxin by Li Changqing, a former lieutenant colonel of the Yan Yunwei and Special Forces instructor. Zhang Yi and the others had to learn the cooperation that is really required in the battlefield, including basic squad tactics. Professional soldiers are definitely better at this than these amateurs. The next day, Yi and the others, who had recovered after treatment, found Zhang Yi. They had already seen Zhang Yi's strength and were completely convinced. Yi took the lead, and the three of them bowed 90 degrees to Zhang Yi. "Captain, please forgive our rudeness. We hope to join the operation to surround and attack Eclipse Moon and avenge Captain Deng and the teammates in the Heavenly God Squad." Zhang Yi looked at the three in front of him and didn't say a word. The three bowed 90 degrees and maintained that position for a full 10 minutes. Even for trained soldiers, the psychological pressure was somewhat heavy. Just as they were about to hold on no more, Zhang Yi's voice came cold and indifferent from above. "Are you satisfied with my punishment?" A major demerit and a public review of their mistakes. This punishment was a bit too heavy for just being late once. But the three of them were no longer young, and they understood that Zhang Yi was establishing his authority over them. And now if they wanted to return, they would have to look Zhang Yi in the eye. Yi quickly replied, "We are satisfied." He quickly pulled out the review from his body. It was a very long, handwritten letter of self-reflection, running to more than 10 pages. "This is my self-reflection." Zhang Yi didn't even bother to read it. Members of the Tengu squad are willing to risk their lives and fight for the honor of the country. Therefore, there is a high probability that you will die. If it is for the sake of victory, I will not hesitate to sacrifice your lives. Even so, do you still want to join? Some things need to be made clear in advance. Otherwise, when the time comes for them to go and die, it will leave people with something to say. The three of them said in unison, "As long as we can destroy Eclipse Moon, we are willing to sacrifice our lives." For these soldiers who had long been at war, death was not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was not having the opportunity to wash away the shame on their bodies and living with remorse for the rest of their lives. The defeat of the Heavenly God Squad had made the name they had once been proud of a big joke. The glory that had been attached to them in the past suddenly dimmed, and they could even often hear others talking about the Heavenly God Squad's defeat to Eclipse Moon. It was even more humiliating than the defeat of the number 1 seed in the competition zone. The team with the highest chance of winning the World Championship lost to a team that had advanced from the qualifying round of the 3rd Division. So they stayed up all night, unable to sleep, longing to go and fight the Eclipse Moon team right away. Even if they died on the battlefield, it would be more comfortable for them than living as cowards. In the end, Zhang Yi chose to let the three men publicly recite their letters and then admit them into the team. Zhang Yi told the three of them, "Okay, now get back in line and keep training." The three responded, "Yes, Captain." After all, these three men are also quite good fighters, and they will definitely be useful in the fight against Eclipse Moon. Anyway, even if they have reservations about Zhang Yi in their hearts, they will not dare to disobey in the battlefield. Because of this, Zhang Yi can justifiably kill them. In the time that followed, training became their main task.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and like the video. Thank you.